All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
Fruits Basket, Season 2, Episode 20.
Wow, into the 20s.
Yep, that's right. The closer and closer we get, though, to the end of the season, the more terrified I get because,
I feel ya.
The end of Season 1 was a bit...
Yes. Thankfully,
trying.
Thankfully, the end of Season 1, like the actual final episode, was actually pretty good. It was the second to last episode that was really rough. Which means, though, that...
Yeah.
Like, we know how trilogies just tend to go. Like,
and the second one, you gotta have the crazy bombshell that is the, oh god,
everything is awful.
Everything is awful. And given what they what they've been hinting at in the last couple episodes, I'm very worried because I want these characters to be happy and healthy and whole.
And they will.
And they will.
Eventually. There will be a satisfying victory.
But Caleb, can you imagine if the Season 2 finale or, like, penultimate finale is Toru breaking? Like...
I mean, honestly, it has to happen
at some point, right?
Alchemy is the scientific, in order to gain something of equal value must be lost.
But what could possibly equal the value of Toru's happiness? Yeah.
So, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion.
I have come to the realization that 5 cour is not enough time for Fruits Basket.
Yeah.
For one very specific reason. Is it enough time for, like, the wonderful character development stuff? Yes, absolutely. But it's just too damn short for all the school shenanigans.
Right.
Because
there's so many characters.
There's so many characters. And damn, that whole bit where they're talking about, like, the Cinderella play and all that stuff at the beginning of the episode... That was great.
That was goofy,
I loved that.
Ridiculous.
Like, please, more of that. I know that it means so much because we've had all this time to, like, know the struggles and the feelings of all the characters. But, like, I would take a show of just that. Like, so fast.
I feel like the reason why we care about it so much is because of the emotional complexities of all the characters and dealing with their family life.
Exactly.
But the idea that we get also this setting where things can be lighthearted, it's in some ways the way where they can kind of escape reality of the shitty situations that they live in.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are, in some ways...
ongoing shitty situations.
Well, yeah, a lot of them are ongoing shitty situations, but some of them are moving in really good, positive directions.
Sure.
So, this episode was funny, I just gotta say. Manabe was quickly, again, just reminded that he's actually an amazingly fun character. Yeah. Yuki, also being kind of funny as well. But freaking the reveal of the casting choice was
excellent.
So funny. I have to say, though, the hilarity of having Kyo be the prince, in some ways being this meta poke of like, hey, guess who's the prince now? Right. Look who is so proud of her orange boy. Yep. He's like, oh, you get to be the prince. That's wonderful. Master San's gonna be so happy. And he's like, don't tell him. Don't you dare tell him about that.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, Toru's not Cinderella, because that would be cruel. We don't need to have Toru have people be mean to her on stage. She already has enough of that with just I don't know, like, just the conflict, from some family and all that stuff.
But let's make her be the evil stepsister. That is fucking brilliant. That is also a really funny meta thing as well, of like, she's like, I'm gonna do my best. And it's like, she's gonna be horrible at it. And just wanting to see her even act in such a way where she can be like, I understand the stepsister.
But that could be fun. Given that the previous episode ended with the whole thing of like eventually she'll snap, maybe this could be a fun little exercise where it's the no. You have to be selfish and mean. You have to take all of those frustrations and just not just let them run rampant, but you have to like fan them because you have to. Will the acting be
too real? Actually. We'll see. But hey, that's just something we have to look forward to. The Culture Festival is being worked on. But this episode primarily focused on Yuki. And like overwhelmingly so. There was a lot of stuff with the student council in general.
The stuff with Machi, that was great. I'm glad that we got that focus with her because she had a very aggressive introduction, and so that now that we finally know why and what the dynamic is,
right, the backstory kind of stuff,
and the stuff with her and Manabe, cool,
right,
awesome.
I feel like though, what the creator of the story is doing in a really kind of roundabout way here is we're setting up Manabe and Machi to be kind of the two sides of Yuki. Like think about this. Manabe is obviously not Yuki. He's very different, right? But the aspect of where he's like, just kind of flow with it, man.
Yeah.
Just go.
Just throw everything.
Yeah,
Why not?
Who cares if things are in chaos? It's fine.
Laugh at it.
Yeah, laugh at it. He is that healthy side of Yuki that Yuki would love to have, but he needs to kind of by osmosis have more practice with it by just being in proximity with people like Manabe.
And it bugs him because Manabe has it to such an extreme when Yuki still needs to work on having it, but then also by seeing it in the extreme, there might be a part of Yuki that's like, I don't actually want that because, look at all the problems that causes.
It's not me also.
You're right.
I definitely like to learn something from that, but if that's where Yuki's going, where he takes little pieces of everything that he's learned from people, that's another way in which he can also kind of, like Shigure was saying, like kind of let go, stop clinging to Toru, because he's been taking almost too much of his just general being from specific people, rather than what normal people do, which is just kind of having that collection, that large just swath of people that you're influenced by and you're having little bits for, rather than just being like, I'm solely focused on one or two people.
Right. You don't need to wholly imitate someone else. You can
it's fine to draw inspiration from.
Right, exactly. It makes me think of the good artist copy, great art steal thing, but I don't know how exactly that applies in the metaphor breakdown.
Here's how it applies pretty well here. I would say that a lot of people look at something and where they're like, I'm going to do this, exactly this. So therefore, people change constantly. So then you would change with them. But if you steal, you take the thing in its current state and you remove it from them, and you're like, okay, but how do I apply this into me? Yeah, this thing that is static.
Right.
Now?
You see someone use like a reaction meme or something like that, and you're like, yes, yep, that's mine now, right?
You're not gonna wait for someone to post the exact same meme and then use this as the response. You then take this and go, for something that I find funny, or
this is a tool that I have.
I have a tool in my toolbox. Right. So Manabe is giving him tools.
Exactly.
And by extension, now Yuki is giving Machi tools.
Right. Yes. I was just about to say that.
Cool.
Right. Cool. So then he's in this situation where, oh no, he's in this, because we've seen Yuki get like truly triggered by situations of where all of a sudden, oh God, he was on cloud 9, but now he's in the depths of despair, right? And this is one of those situations, right, where for the old Yuki it would have been that, and it could have turned into that if he had been in there too long, right?
Yeah.
Also, interestingly enough, because he doesn't do the thing of breaking himself out, even though he could, because someone said, no, that would cause trouble, we don't need to do that. That's fun, because that's in direct conflict with what Machi ended up doing, because, they weren't able to get someone to help. Okay, that's fine. And Yuki specifically told her, you know what? Hey, you did that? That's fine. Don't try and say you're not going to do it. Just help us understand it. Oh, hey, now there's a situation where that is something that is helpful, that tool that you gave her, and then she uses it and it helps you, and it's just, there you go.
I also think it's another thing where it's actually easier to break the door in than to break the door out because of the way the door opens.
Right, depending on where the frame is and all that.
Well, right, but the door opens in. So it would literally be harder to go through
because there'd be the doorstop,
Right. But okay, Machi's thing, though, she seems to, on some level, be taking a lot of the burden of being the one that's meant to be the next heir of the family, and kind of venting that frustrations on the objects in her environment.
Right.
But she is incapable of communicating that frustrations with other people, so it's a cycle, so it doesn't lead to progress. But at this moment, she basically was given the tool of, hey, when this happens again, not that this is never going to happen again, but when this happens again, let us know, like, what brings you to that place.
It's something where basically the root cause was not addressed, but there was an acceptance that was had of being in that place, right? Yuki accepted her where she was at.
Right.
Not Yun-Yun, Manabe has gotten to a point where he accepted where he was at, both with the outburst, but then also with his whole mantra of like, well, hey, if you're in a situation that you can't change that's bad, at least you can laugh at it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something that you can always do. That's a form of acceptance, right? And so now I get the feeling Machi will have less of a problem with all of that stuff because she's started to accept things. I don't think we'll necessarily get into like too much more full detail of exactly where those outbursts came from, where it's like,
no,
she was upset
not.
at that because she let herself be a part of her mom's proxy war or whatever. Then Manabe's relationship with his parents was strained because he ended up acting out as a result of that in order to break free from it, and yada yada yada. I'm sure there's all kinds of layers that could be gotten into, but for now, well, she had someone who accepted her where she was in the middle of it all.
Yeah, I really like that Manabe, in some ways, also, his efforts don't really mean as much, because for her, he's the one that did it. But she's not allowed probably to do that. She's probably basically like, oh, you better not do the same thing and then ruin our family's chances of being able to get the inheritance side of things.
Because we have it now.
We have it now.
Right.
Don't you fuck it up.
Yeah.
So I think her acts of doing kind of the same thing that Manabe does is basically like her trying to find some catharsis in the midst of this.
Right, it's
like,
I can't do that at home, so I will do that here, I guess, because that's something where I can still...
Right, and just have a semblance of control. And I don't think that she even understands entirely why she's doing it. That's why she doesn't talk about it.
Right.
But the part that she does understand, I think, is something that she can kind of feel connected to Manabe a little bit with it. That's why he's like, hey, I got this.
Right.
I kind of know what's going on, and she probably has told him a little bit, but he's not probably comfortable going too much in depth as to like speculating why. Hence why when Yuki asks, he's like, yeah, I know what it's related to, but I don't know why she's doing it. Like,
it's something where as this is just sort of a personal philosophy of mine, but I feel like people in society in general aren't nearly as accepting of these kinds of like aggressive physical acts as a way to vent stress.
Sure.
Because the thing is that when they most of the time happen, it's because it's looked down on, they're usually done in outbursts where it's like kind of it gets to the point where it's outside of the person's control.
Right.
As opposed to being something that's like deliberate and measured and done in a good controlled environment, right?
Well, yeah.
So like a lot of the times when I would
go to a gym and boxing.
Exactly. That was exactly the example I was going to bring up.
That's the one that's societally acceptable.
Right, exactly.
Because you can push it to that extremes and no one really bats an eye because they're like, maybe he just likes to box. And you're like, that fucking teacher, this fucking person.
Right. But sometimes, but if there was some other equivalent of that, there was a funny show bit that where there was a character who liked another character but they wouldn't say it, and then whenever they would see them with someone else they would get really angry, but they needed to figure out how to do something with that, so they would take TVs that had been thrown out and then smash them, and then it got to the point where they ended up not having any TVs that were in that trash, so they bought a TV and then smashed it, and they were like, okay, I'm good, and if
What show is this?
How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I haven't seen that show. Okay.
Yeah, but so like, when you're dealing with crazy shit, right? And you need to figure out a way to process the emotions and accept that the emotions are there, right? Because some like the things that the emotions might make you want to do clearly are unacceptable, right?
Sure.
But is there some way that you can basically still vent those emotions in a way that is not going to hurt anybody or anything like that, and it is truly a like you have control over it, right? Because I feel like the worst, or not the worst, but one of the bad situations that you get into when you're in a situation like that is that then you get down on yourself because you aren't able to keep control over yourself, right? Like so then it's this downward spiral where regardless of what the initial triggering event was. Now you're dealing with you, not even the actual event itself, right? And so then it's sort of this like lose-lose situation, and then hey, having someone from the outside that comes in and, you know, is understanding or whatever, that I feel like that can be really helpful. But
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, so Yuki, he learned a couple things here. One is that there's times when things are just a bit off. Way he described it as like, no, it's like a button placed wrong. And he's like, oh, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right.
Yes, I do. Yeah. You're agreeing with yourself. It's like, no, the idea that life can be in this situation where because of your patterns or whatever, your modus operandi, you end up in a situation where, oh, I've been putting the second button in the first hole all this time. No wonder things have felt a little bit off. It's like if you you sleep in a bed where there's like a knot in it, but it's just imperceptible enough that you don't really notice it. But then you go digging or something like that. You're like, something feels a bit off here. I can't tell what it is.
Right.
But it's weird.
One of the ones that I would deal with a lot growing up, where I didn't want to like bathe multiple times in a day. And so if I took a shower like in the morning, but then for some reason I got like really sweaty, I wouldn't want to like take a shower because I was like, I'm going to take another shower in the morning.
Okay.
But I would have like worse sleep if I went to bed sweaty because, you know, then you're not comfortable in your bed, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know. Maybe that's TMI or something.
No, I don't get what.
I feel like it made more sense in my head. But
Okay.
basically the uneven buttons thing where it's like, it could be something very small, like a knot in your bed or whatever, right? But you know that something's off.
Right.
I don't know.
I think you just knew too specifically what the off issue was.
Sure.
In this case, I'm talking about where it's
where you don't know.
You have no idea, but you know something's off. An example of this, I would say, is the fact that Machi has these vented frustrations. I don't think she knows exactly what's wrong. She just has an idea that something's wrong.
Right, because if she did know exactly what was wrong, then it would probably be done in a more controlled environment or something like that. And to be fair, for the most part, she does it when she's either by herself or just with Manabe.
Or thinks that she's,
or thinks that she's by herself, right? So there's that.
There is that, yeah.
But,
And obviously, Manabe gives her that space, like when we first met them, So having Yuki realizing that, hey, there's a couple things that are off here. Let's go over the list of things. There's the obvious ones. Akito. Yep. Sure. Absolutely. The Zodiac curse in general. Sure. His mother. His parents. Yes.
Yep.
That's stuff that's obviously off. But there's some other things that are off about Yuki. One is that he has trouble expressing some aspects of his emotions. We saw some times in this episode where he was practicing the more, I would say, unprincely side of things with Yuki. Just being like, I said later. Like that was an example of where Yuki was like, oh, yeah, I'm allowed to do that. I can get frustrated with someone who's badgering me and being a bit, on the nose of something and just give the de facto, I'm sorry, I'm in charge here. This is what we're doing.
Toru, I wish you could see this.
I know, right?
Like, not because you could be like, hey, great job, Yuki, but like, it's okay to do that. In fact, there is a kind of dissonance that can make people very uncomfortable when they never see that, and they're like, what's going on with you?
Yeah. Now, the idea that Yuki was basically ending the episode with the I'm gonna talk about something I haven't talked about to anybody with Manabe. Feels wonderful because this is an instance of where Manabe has broken through Yuki's shell, and they are Union's shell. They are friends. They are nakama. They are and it's a bumbling, goofy relationship, but it's real. It's real. And the fact that this is something that he hasn't shared with anybody, but is related to Toru.
Yeah.
Meaning that it's something where, on some level, his emotional needs are probably being, unhealthily met through Toru on some way.
Sure.
But it's like there's like a specific aspect to it. Something where he has let himself put on this button a specific way, like with his like interactions with Toru, basically.
Right.
Like, this is something that has colored his perspective.
And the kind of thing where like, to maybe take the button analogy into a way that might be too far, I don't know.
Sure.
But if Yuki was naked in the bitter cold, he wouldn't really care about whether the things were buttoned properly. Right?
Yeah.
Because let's be real, that's not a priority at that point. But then once Yuki's gotten to this point where he's like, okay, I'm actually doing pretty well, I can worry about adjusting things, right? Not just are my basic needs of shelter and being met, right? Like then it's the okay, this doesn't quite feel right. I'm gonna fix this up.
Well, I think the acknowledgement that there's an issue and the desire to then take action to fix it up is something that only happens when you're in a healthy place.
Right.
Because otherwise the problem can still exist when you're in the unhealthy place.
Totally, yes.
It can just be a thing where you have no acknowledgement of it because it's so beneath all the survival stuff.
And problem in that, like, it doesn't have to be necessarily having a negative effect right then, like
it's again a priorities thing of where it could be having some, but it's so minute compared to the other problems that it might as well be nothing. With Toru though, he drew a connection in the previous episode, and I found it to be rather interesting that in the beginning of this episode they used this as the one previously bit was how he and Rin are actually the same in that they both want the same thing from Toru, or they both wanted or desired or as he says in the end of the episode, what I yearned from her was. And I really feel like having that as the point of comparison here, and really the only thing I would say that's a like definitive linchpin as to what this is versus like what it's not. Like there's a lot of things that it's not, I would say. One is I would say that it's not something romantic.
Right.
It's something where Toru is in what's the way to describe this? Like Toru is in like her best like idyllic, like perfect kind of image, almost something that Yuki has maybe seen in that way. Like like that's like that's something where he's like, "Whoa, Toru, you're amazing," right? And then that can get colored over maybe for the like all the times where Toru is not amazing, not perfect, and then he ends up maybe like elevating her on that point. But I feel like that's still like not specific enough.
Well, so one of the things that, if this wasn't brought up in the beginning of the episode, is like a tie-in from the previous one, right? But something that I thought was could be related is what Shigure said of it's not about whether or not you need to depend on someone for help, it's what you do after. Right now Yuki is in the situation where he's in the after, right? And he's deciding what he wants to do. So maybe that's connected somehow with like the because since Yuki has and this is a bit of a externally processing here, right? Since Yuki has enough of an issue with kind of helping himself in some ways, it's semi-similar to Toru. Like he's in the room and he doesn't bust himself out, even though he says he could, because he believes it would be an inconvenience, I feel like
he told him not to, like
no, totally, but like he also could have just been like, nah, for reasons I just needed to get out of there. I didn't want to be in there. There we go. Right.
It wasn't an immediate fear thing either. Like the fear thing only came up when the paint spilled.
Right.
Like he wasn't immediately like hyperventilating or anything. So I don't think he felt any urgency to get out.
No. I think it was something where it was starting to build. Like you mentioned, he was getting anxious when he thanked Machi. So like it could have become more of a situation than it was. Right. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something where because Yuki has a problem helping himself some of the time, that then the compensation for that could be in desiring someone to help him all the time. But I'm not sure, like,
okay.
Like, because I feel like that could in the similar way that Rin talked about how Toru could end up snapping at some point.
Yeah.
I feel like if Yuki were to snap, that's what it would be, right?
What do you mean again?
Like
how would he snap?
That it's the yes, that because he has trouble helping himself, has had trouble helping himself.
Sure.
That then, if that gets taken to such an extreme, then it's the someone must always help me, right? Like if you were to get someone who would do that, but that's
which is
I feel like a fair amount of that is conjecture on my part.
It's a bit of conjecture, but let's run with it a little bit. So Toru had a repeated scene with Yuki where she's kind of being like, hey, don't push yourself. But in the second time, she's like, don't
do your best. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what she noticed there was that this was something where having the expectation that, this person, needs basically to be reminded of this is a bit of like, I mean, maybe this is a bit harsh, but it's a thing of where she's like, I don't feel like he needs that. I don't feel like that's what he needs. But just a little bit of affirmation.
Right.
That's good.
And
yeah.
So
and he didn't seem to have any over like emphasis on that. He was just like,
nope.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess where some of this might come from for me is that I also want to like read into a lot more than I probably need to of the Yuki being the fairy godmother. Because what if Yuki's final form basically was to have everything within him figured out so well that he could be the giver of gifts and the bringer of boons in a similar way to Toru? Because he has so figured that out within himself that then the thing that he wants from Toru is to be able to be like her, right? And I could see that having some really awesome moments down the road when, say, Toru is really having trouble, or Yuki's Kyo's in trouble, and
yeah, I mean that makes sense. Yeah, I would say that on the meta level, if we're gonna have the Kyo Prince angle joke in there, which makes perfect sense. Why? Then but then Yuki's role also could have some meta kind of stuff in there as well. So that tracks. I think the idea of him having his final transformation, if you will, be about him being equipped in such a way that he can help Toru feels like a really good angle on that there. The difference is that Toru, I feel like, needs to ask for it.
Yes.
Like, this is not a thing of where she's like, she needs to like almost wish upon upon
star, the fairy godmother. Yeah.
But in some ways, Yuki feels like he's almost learned that lesson in some ways of how much the importance of leaning on and being vulnerable with others is versus clinging to others.
Right.
And in the moment where Rin is with Toru and Yuki's having his realization there, she is literally clinging to Toru.
Right.
And I got the impression from that this is the unhealthy thing that Yuki has done multiple times in the past of basically like living on Toru's words and thoughts and feelings and stuff like that, and in some ways playing in too much into the prince kind of role persona kind of thing. So by him saying in this episode, I need to take a step back from being the prince, and then the times where we see him maybe the closest to being the prince is when
when Machi has her freak out?
Well, yeah, but not Machi. The other girl literally says this.
What was her name?
Toto.
Yeah.
Toto. She's like, you're being like a prince here. Was basically him kind of stepping in and being like, hey, are you okay? This is what we need from you. And she's like, wow, okay. And I think that if that's his deviation is that he can be like a prince to people by helping them and being kind of like a commanding bit of like reassuring presence, like not a perfect like, oh yes, I am ethereal and everything I do is flawless. But right. No, I'm going to take that little bit of assertive action to insert myself into this situation if I have some way that I can help. But I'm not going to put the burden on me to be the one that helps, because that's what Toru does.
Right, exactly. So, and that's where he could, in a way, go farther than Toru, and also maybe show Toru some of the ways in which she can grow, because he didn't have that issue. So he doesn't have to learn that lesson. So it could be something where then he can help people be their best self without it.
Yes.
Without
his burden.
Yeah, without needing to actually like be the step ladder that they climb on.
Right. And I think that his like the clinging aspect in that regard is what I would call an example of an unequal relationship.
Sure.
So when you have a situation like the Yuki Prince Club, they have an unequal valuation of Yuki to Yuki's valuation of them.
Right.
It is not balanced in the slightest.
Nope.
I would say that the weird thing as to where Yuki is kind of realizing that he has something about Toru that has kind of put him askew with like his buttons being off, is that they both kind of have issues with how they balance relationships with others in their environment. But Toru's is kind of like, oh, if you're in my love circle, well, then I give you everything, and I don't ask for anything.
Right. Which
Yuki's,
is
I think,
a form of sort of prince behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Yuki's was something of more of a, I don't see myself as valuable. I see only those that have been basically the ones that have helped me as valuable. But I see them as such a high value because they gave me some kind of picture of something good that I can then let go of that image so that I can just have a normal connection with them. Because it feels almost like he's been not avoiding Toru, but he's been kind of like not interacting with her as much. And I think that might be because he's also trying to take a step back so that Kyo can be, there for her, and he doesn't involve himself in their budding,
indeed,
thing they've got going on.
But also because he's trying to work on himself, and from the standpoint of the seeing, Toru seeing the people around her as, I feel like they both see the people around them that they care about a bunch as being sort of hyper valuable, because from Yuki's perspective, he was in the pits, right? And Toru helped bring him out of that.
Yep.
From Toru's perspective, she had no family and was living in a tent, right? And they gave her the thing that she has most wanted, family, right?
Yep.
That's something that they can't fully understand how much that means to her, because the thing that they have, their family has been broken, right? Yep. So they don't, it's not that big a deal, right? They don't know what the real good thing can look like until suddenly she comes along, know? And yeah, I love these characters. I love their arcs. I'm so excited to see them grow and resolve and all of that. And this episode did a lot for me of being like, we can have wonderful moments of character growth that don't have to be like super hard and heavy and like, Yeah. So, and Uo's derp faces and just all of that was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
But y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all of this comes with Discord access. So you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.